Internet, it's me. Now it's Halloween, so yay, happy Halloween, eat some candy. I'm gonna. But, there's another person. This is Davis. He, as I mentioned in the other video, is my director of Willowvale Harbor, which is also, as you saw from the title, the movie we're gonna review. But before we do that, because I don't think we can be objective, not entirely anyway, we have, and I know you've seen it too, someone reviewed our video on IMDb.
Yeah.
And it is actually a well-written, very well thought-out, thorough review. So I'm just going to read that like some really lame-ass narrator, and then we can discuss the thoughts that we have on both the review and the movie.
Good.
So just bear with me for a bit here. Let's see how well I can read on camera. Which is what I do in every video because I script these. Overall, I felt this was a fun watch. Review over, that was great. No. I enjoyed that there was some comic relief, great camera work, sound design, and music was really enjoyable. I did feel there were several plot holes that it would have been nice to have cleared up though. I'll go into more detail below, but if you don't want spoilers, I feel this is worth a watch. You can tell everyone involved really worked hard and cared about this project. It really felt like it was inspired by something like Centralia, PA or The Crazies. Spoilers past this point. This film had a lot of fun ideas that I think could have used more fleshing out. I forgive a lot due to this being a low-budget film, but story is something that I think really needed some work. It was overall a good story and clearly had some holes that needed filled. Grammar is a bit... eh. A minor one is that Mike seems to go into the middle of nowhere in upstate New York, but it's not really clear how Dan knows where to find him. We assume directions were somehow given to him, but this is not shown. Again, this is minor though, and I don't really think it takes away from the story. Another minor issue is that Dan is really not dressed for this. Yeah, you're telling me. But this could just be because I get cold really easily and it was snowing. So at least a bigger jacket would have been a good idea. At one point he passes a sign that says Willowvale Harbor, but if it was some big government cover-up, you'd think they'd destroy that sign. I grew up not far from Site R in Maryland, and it looked very locked down. If there were zombie-like creatures loose or something like a rage virus, then you'd think it would be more like the Crazies, where the government would be taking them out. It seems more that this area was supposed to be abandoned. A couple other things that were a bit confusing. At one point, Dan is running from some of the zombies, and it's night, but then later he's running and it's day. Are we supposed to assume he ran all night? At this point, though, he finds a place to hide and rest, though it's not clear how he got away from them. He has a dream that we find out is like a memory. It seems he got away as a baby, but I can accept that this area might have some supernatural aspects. There's a part later where his sister seems to move things with her mind. This is where we find out that Dan was born here, and he was immune to the virus, and everyone else had to stay and suffer, and they've been trying to find him. This part also lost me a bit. It seems they knew where he was and made an effort to lure him in. If they knew where he was and who his friends were, then why not just go get him? Even with that point, if he might have had a cure in his blood, they couldn't tell him and simply take samples? Now, I know this all seems really critical, and I only say this because I feel this group really could do some amazing stuff in the future. They had the outline of a great story and even referenced Romero and Night of the Living Dead, clearly an inspiration. You really feel those vibes, especially with Dan being killed at the end, just like how Night of the Living Dead ends. I enjoyed the nostalgia with the floppy disks, the nutty conspiracy theorist friend was fun, the acting was good, though there were areas for improvement with some of the more minor characters. The areas they used to film were really good and really felt isolated and creepy. If this could have a tighter script to fill in those holes, then I think this would really improve the overall movie. 1 out of 1 found this helpful. So yeah, that's the feedback we got, and we've both seen that and read that before, and I know some of the other people in the movie have too. Honestly, I think he pretty much nailed it.
Yeah, the one thing that I noticed about that review was there wasn't anything really out of left field that we didn't expect.
Yeah.
Because this film took 6+ years to finish.
Yeah.
And it was definitely a fight uphill the entire way. When we started with it, it changed so much from what we ended up actually filming.
Oh, absolutely. The script changed so many times, and like a lot of the plot holes you mentioned are things that we knew about, and it was just we had to cut it for time's sake or because of pacing. Right. Or at one point, one of the areas we filmed in was that Girl Scout camp, and then vandals broke in and burned down one of the buildings that we had shot in.
Yeah.
So
we had to make a new
we couldn't
scene
shoot
for
that anymore, and we couldn't really do anything else with that scene. We either had to scrap it entirely or just use what we had and then stick with that, however incomplete it may be. So, yeah, there were a lot of things that, I mean, we knew it going in that this was a hole, but it was just, it was either go in with that hole or add another year to shooting or rewrite the movie again, and it was the lesser of all evils at that point.
Right, and part of what we dealt with was the weather, because we didn't have, obviously, the budget to make artificial winter.
Yeah.
So when it wasn't winter and we had to shoot, we had to do some creative editing.
Yeah, that was the thing. We did film in the winter. Like that. Yeah. Most of the snow was real. It was incredibly cold. I will say, though, he mentioned like my clothing not being appropriate for the winter. That partly was due to the story, though, because the whole thing was I was on my way to work. Like, I was just going about my day. I thought Mike was crazy. Right. And then when I get his call where he sounds like, okay, things are real, like the shit hit the fan, he's in danger, that's when I just suddenly like, all right, crap, I gotta go. And so I just drop everything and leave. Right. And that's why I was dressed to go to work, not to go rescue his ass from the woods.
Right. I think it was written in the script that we had it where you changed out of your good work jacket into like, whatever was in your trunk. And I think we also did have another scene where he was going to send you information about how to find Willowvale. Mm-hmm. It's so that
we may have even filmed that at one point.
I know we filmed part of it at one point, but we ended up having to move it around because things had changed. Yeah, I think in the storyline, and what we had filmed wasn't going to fit, so we would have had to film another. I do remember like writing out something for that, but then COVID hit, and then we didn't film for a good 6 to 8 months, and then we picked back up and we're like, the hell with it, we have to finish this thing. But we ended up filming like I would say the middle and last half of it in the middle of the pandemic too. Yeah.
Which luckily most of my stuff was done by then, except for the finale. Yeah. The finale actually was one of the last scenes we filmed. Right. I'm going to talk about that in a bit, but first I want to point out he mentioned that the area we shot at looked really isolated and cool. And actually, a lot of that is just your expertise, which I'm going to take a second to just kind of fillet him a little here, is that he did 98% of this movie. Like, it's not just the writing and the filming, but, I mean, you were the director, the editor, you were the writer, you did set design, costume design, makeup, the lighting, handled all the sound, you created the contract with the dude that did the score. Mm-hmm. Like, you did all of this movie. The rest of us were just in your sandbox. Yeah. But, no, we actually shot in a bunch of different places. There was the abandoned asylum. There was the old Girl Scout camp. I don't think we used many of the scenes, but we shot some in the woods behind your parents' house, and then in the woods behind that old little industrial building garage that a friend of yours owns, and then we shot in a rundown trailer on the other side of their property, and then I think we shot in various other sets of woods, too. Like, we had a good 7 or 8 different locations. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's the park there, and the other park out in Brockport. So, yeah, we shot a ton of different places, and you just stitched them all together to look like it was one area. Right. But none of those were the same place. It's rare where one scene goes into another scene and we're in the same location. Yeah, a lot of that was originally when we started planning, because when I say it took 6 years to film, it was probably like 4.5 years of filming on and off, and then the rest of it was pre-production, post-production. Yeah. Pre-production, it was probably 8 months to a year before we even picked up a camera. Mm-hmm. It was all writing, planning, figuring out what was going to go on to try and make it as painless as possible, because when we started out, we had like a cast and crew of like 6 people. Yeah. Well, that was the thing, and I'm going to stop monologuing at some point, but like he mentioned the acting, and like, first of all, I have to disagree. The acting was not great. He is wrong. It was awful. But like, I think a lot of that was mindset, and I think that's why it was different for some of the extras, because when you first told me about it, my first thought is, oh, cool, a buddy of mine wants to do a movie. I think it'll be fun to be in a movie. Let's do the thing. Mm-hmm. And that was pretty much it. Like, I wasn't taking it too seriously. I'm just like, we're just hanging out, having fun, whatever. And so, like, in the beginning, I was ad-libbing a lot, and I wasn't, I was kind of goofing around. There was a lot of, like, behind-the-scenes things that you had to edit out because I would ruin 50 takes from making jokes. But, like, as it went on, and we got more and more cast members and crew members, and we just started to do more, and the project kept going, I think, like, myself and Tyler and some of the people that were around for more of it just took it a lot more seriously.
Right.
And like the extras, they were coming in for a scene for like a weekend shoot. So I think they were in that earlier camp where they're like, oh, my friends want me to come do this thing. This will be fun. Meanwhile, the rest of us who had been there all the time were like, no, this is a serious thing now. Like, we really want to do this.
Right.
And I think that's why, like, the finale we did film last, and I think that's the scene Tyler and I both, like, we really were trying our hardest. Like, we want this to be good. We worked hard to memorize our lines and to get it down and make sure our delivery was believable. Like, we wanted to do a good job with it at the end.
Right.
Which is why now when I watch the movie, I see scenes that I know we filmed earlier, and I'm like, oh my god, I was such a putz when filming this. Like, this could have been so much better.
And the tough thing about that is the way we filmed it and edited it wasn't completely in sequence. So the first scenes that we shot wasn't necessarily in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
So if you look at it, you can tell your performance changes from the beginning of the movie, and it's like up and down throughout. Because and I kid you not, when you watch this, there might be a scene where you're running off of the camera in this direction, and the next cut that comes up of you finishing that run could have been filmed 2 years apart.
Oh, absolutely.
And
that's it was so all over the place.
Yeah, that was the insane thing about it, and it was a lot of that boiled down to timing with the weather, because we would, how many times did we say, you're good with your schedule, I'm good with my schedule for this weekend, it's cool, we got like 8 inches of snow, it's supposed to be cold, Friday rolls around, it's 40 degrees, all the snow's gone.
Yeah.
And we're just like, we can't.
Multiple times we would lose a month at a go because there would be no snow, and we needed to shoot primarily external shots.
Right. Yeah, it was a huge pain, and there were days where we would go and it would be, I think the coldest day that we ever shot was like in the negative digits. It was probably -10 or something like that. And then the hottest day that we shot was probably 9+. And that that in itself isn't the worst part about it, but these guys were roasting because they're wearing
I had to wear the full costume, Yeah,
they're wearing winter clothes, so he's like roasting in the summer wearing that hoodie and then freezing in the winter because the hoodie isn't enough.
It was funny because I remember that day we had to, in between takes, I would strip down to just like a wife beater and that was it. And then right before we started rolling, I'd throw the other layers back on. And I remember we had to keep doing makeup because I was sweating shit off.
Yep.
Like, that was a nightmare.
And that was one of those situations where the scene right before it cuts, was a normal one of the coldest days. Yeah, a normal day in the winter, or the coldest day in the winter, butted up right against the hottest day. Yeah. And then in post production, I had to add in snow because obviously it's not going to snow in the middle of June. No. And so it was finding a balance between doing enough CG to fill in and kind of bridge that gap between the two seasons, and then do the color grading, and then hope that the lighting wasn't going to be too terribly off. And I go back and I watch some of the stuff, and I'm like, I can tell that was shot in the summer, but nobody has said it that I've shown it.
No,
because it's diced in enough. I think I did a decent enough job matching things, and budget wise, when we first started this, the original planning was, we wanted to film this during the winter because things would not change. Snow and trees look the same no matter where you are. So we could film in multiple locations, and then even if we didn't film for a few months, we could go back the next winter, pick up those scenes, and then it would just be snow and trees. And then luckily it did kind of turn out that way. That is how
it worked out.
It did kind of turn out that way.
Kept rolling over years.
Yeah, it kept on going on and on. And then at one point we had to go back in for a rewrite, and Eve Hovey, she's my co-writer on this. Yeah. And best friend /
basically your protege at this point.
Yeah. Her and I got to a point where we were just like, these are the things that would need to happen, and these are the things that don't need to happen. We just need to finish it. and a lot of the push that I got, because at one point I was probably sitting in my office with my head on my keyboard going, this is never going to get finished, and just say the hell with it, just cut my losses and just be done with it. But there were a couple of people that were involved in the film that ended up passing away during production, and their scenes were in there, and I kind of used that as a way to be like, their family wants to see them acting, and this was one of the things that they were to do it. Yeah, they were one of the things that they were proud to be in it. They were happy they were doing it, so like that was my big push to make it happen, regardless of how it turned out.
That is one thing I will say, because you mentioned like they were proud to be in it, is that I think that was another driving factor here, and this has really changed how I look at movies and how I review movies. I know it's different now, but I'm like, people were busting their ass on this. Like, even if at the end of the day it wasn't the best movie, and I'll be the first to tell you it's not the best movie, but like, people tried. Like, they really did. Like, it wasn't just us. Like, even the extras that were there for a weekend, they might have goofed around a little, but they still, like, they put the effort in. They wanted it to be good. Yeah. So, yeah, like, I don't know. Like, the people I've shown the movie to are all just placating me. Like, oh, it's great. I'm like, okay, well, you don't count. But, like, I can't hate it too much, because, like, I know people really did bust their ass. And, like, that's really cool. So, like, now when I watch other indie movies, like, I always think about that, like, when I'm reviewing them, or when I'm just internal monologue thinking about the movie. I'm like, there are some good things that really shone through. Like, someone probably worked really hard on this bit, so even if the movie wasn't amazing, like, someone put effort into this. Somebody cared.
There were a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of mental breakdowns that led to what you're watching, so... And I think that really happens with just about every film.
Yeah.
Even the huge budget productions, you watch the behind the scenes videos and stuff, and it's like, it almost got canceled, but then it got picked up by another studio.
Oh,
and then they fired the director.
I was going to say, it has to be rewritten and change directors halfway through, change lead actors, whatever the case is.
Yep.
Back to the Future had to reshoot every major scene because they changed the lead actor after the movie was filmed.
Yep. That happens more often than anybody knows, and I guess the good thing is when you start working in indie features and working on indie films and stuff, you realize that the misery that you're experiencing and all the chaos and all the the stress and everything, it's universal straight across the board.
Yeah.
Whether you're in the thick of it and you're wearing 12 hats, or if you're only just one person doing one job, somebody somewhere is having a mental breakdown on the production team.
That was the thing too, I have to say, is like, obviously I was in front of the camera for a lot of it because I was the lead, but then in any scenes that I wasn't in, like when we were filming any of Tyler's stuff, which, by the way, there was no script for any of his scenes. He ad-libbed all of them 100%, and they were ridiculous and amazing, and the takes that we didn't use were probably even better, but we kept breaking behind the camera and we couldn't use them. But, like, I got a great appreciation for what the crew and everyone does, too, because when I wasn't in front of the camera, I would usually help out with, like, the clapboard or holding the boom mic or helping position lights or do whatever, or just herd cats and keep the off-scene people quiet while we're filming. And just, like, yeah, there's stress all around. Like, people are putting in effort even off-screen, even when they're not in the scene. Like, there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, and a lot of it boils down to time, because... some locations that you get, you're like, you have a day to finish it, and if
so you got to make the most of it, or just you don't get it.
And it's not, and it's I guess a lot of people that haven't worked in film and stuff, they don't know that you start super early in the morning, and it might be 5 a.m. Most of the time, I try to keep it so where we're just
I think our earliest was like 7 a.m.
Yeah, we'll roll in 11 a.m. and just finish what we need to do, because we had such a small crew, and most of the setups were natural light, and we didn't have a ton of equipment to bring in. But on the days that we did, it was, several hours to get everything set up. You've got your makeup person
getting get there at 10. Makeup. We wouldn't start shooting till 1.
Yeah. Makeup person has to get everybody lined up and get their prosthetics on or their makeup on. Wardrobe has to go through, do their thing, and make sure that in between scenes, if let's say you get a bullet wound in your shirt or something like that, we may not be filming another scene after the bullet wound. gonna shoot a scene before that happened, next week. So we got to make sure that consistently we're using all of the props get back to where they're supposed to go in the wardrobe. You might have to switch several times between different looks. And
I had multiple shirts because we had one that was post blood and makeup and all that, and then one that was still pre because we filmed it out of order.
Yeah, and that there's so much that goes into that, and then that's one of the things that I guess when I was first starting out, I didn't realize that each person doing one individual task works so much better. Because when you're working on like an indie set, a lot of people will wear multiple hats. Sometimes the director is also the camera person, who's also like doing 15 different things. Your script supervisor might be also your assistant director. Your lighting person might be also doing grip and doing effects and stuff like that. So, but the opportunity to have one person doing only one job sounds like a waste of people, and it's just adding hands to it, but
the expertise helps though. Like if you know how to do one thing and you do it well and you just do that, like that amount of focus is going to make everything go quicker.
Right, because you don't
have to stop and shift gears. You can just like, nope, I'm doing this and just go.
Exactly, and you can do that one job really well without messing up and screwing something up. One job that I think gets taken for granted because people don't understand what goes into it is like the sound person. Mm-hmm. Because they're not just the boom op. They don't just hold the boom up in the air and then just push the button. They have to make sure that when you scream, it's not too loud.
Yeah, they have to monitor all your levels. You have to keep that microphone out of the shot, even in moving shots. So you're basically motion tracking while you're doing
shadows. Reflections, watching out for that. So you're sometimes doing gymnastics and contortionism to get around a lampshade. That,
we had people in some ridiculous positions for forever.
Yep. And then so like those jobs that people think are super simple, the boom op, that's like each job has a really specific thing, and there's a ton of like behind the scenes, almost like paperwork that when you're doing it, because if you have a proper script supervisor and sound person, they will be keeping track of good takes. So, like, if you've got somebody... We didn't have that.
No.
We didn't have that at all.
You had to go on your computer and be like, all right, which of these 7 takes was the one where Dean wasn't fucking around?
Yep, exactly. So, it's... So, the proper way of doing it is you've got your slate person who's in charge of making sure that the scene and take number are proper. They get that from the script supervisor, who keeps track of which takes were good. Because you could be like, the first 3 were garbage, but this last one was gold. Mark that, and they would put that in their notes. But we didn't have a person to do that. And then your audio person has to be able to tell which clip goes with which take, which is the reason for the slate. It's not just for looks, and it's not for just, fancy stuff. Mm-hmm. But that actually serves a purpose when syncing the audio and making sure that all of those match up properly. Which, if anybody's seen our BTS and outtakes video that we did, there were some of them where whoever we had doing the slate, Eve was doing it most of the time. She was just like, "I'm so sorry, I messed it up last time," because it makes you go insane trying to match up the audio with the video and the slate and everything.
And it doesn't help that Kubrick here wanted to do 28 shots of every single scene.
And I'm glad I did, because there were some things where I edited myself into a hole. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh, God, I have literally no footage to cover what I need to do with this. So there were, more often than not, I was finding stuff before we started rolling officially. Mm-hmm. We'd roll the camera before the slate would come in and we would start. There were some of those that I used to smooth the editing out, and then there was stuff that was alternate takes or things that, that I had to steal from things I didn't think I was going to need, just to be able to fill in like to make the progression in the scene make sense. And you would... We took some liberties with, like, when you were running from day to night. That was only because that scene was intended for a different part of the movie entirely.
Yeah, that whole thing was redone. And then the part where he mentioned, like, I'm suddenly in a building, mm-hmm. and then, like, I'm safe, and then, I fall asleep, have this dream or whatever. And, like, we actually had plans to make that fit better. And then there was one bit we shot, and then, like, I think it was the microphone was screwed up or whatever, mm-hmm. and we couldn't salvage the audio, so we couldn't use the scene. Like, it wasn't just I could add ADR. Like, everything was just gone. We would have had to just add so many sound effects and everything just to make it fit. Like, even just the ambient background noise, like, we couldn't use it. And then there was another one where we were going to shoot the following morning where I woke up and left the building or whatever, but that was at that Girl Scout camp that got burned down, and so we couldn't go shoot there for like 2 years because they closed it down. They wouldn't let anyone in.
Mm-hmm.
So we just kind of had to leave that one out there. We're like, we know it's not perfect, but we literally can't do anything about it right now.
I think the shot that I ended up using of you walking into the building was like in between takes of you walking out. Mm-hmm. So you had turned around to go back in the building and then come out for the scene and then go back in after the cut. I think that's literally what I did. Is I just chopped that in and put it in so you can see you walking in. It was definitely not what I wanted, but it was like, well,
it's that or nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there were entire days that we threw out too. So there were, I think the total days that we ended up shooting, it was like 20 between 23 and 26 days, separate days of shooting, over that like 4.5 years.
Yeah.
And we ended up throwing out probably 4 of them just because things didn't work.
Well, I know the whole original intro to the movie we threw out. Like there was a part where I stopped at like a road stop. That was 2 days of shooting that we chucked. And then we filmed originally what was going to be my apartment building. We filmed that downtown in the city here. And that was a day of shooting and a potential death threat, and we threw that all out.
Mattress Man.
It was, we chucked a lot of film. Because like I said, I was there for most of it. Even scenes I wasn't in, I just showed up because I wanted to be part of the thing, and I learned the behind the scenes stuff. And yeah, there was a lot that we shot that we ended up we had to rewrite things, or we had to reorder scenes, or whatever. We just didn't use.
Yep.
There's one scene that prime acting, because it wasn't acting at all. I can't remember offhand if we left it in the movie. I think we did. I think we used the take where I'm exploring an old. I think we were saying it was like an old house. It was actually a trailer on the property of someone. And at one point, I'm looking around, and I go to move what looks to be a hanging ceiling board out of the way. And as I'm moving it out of the way, it legitimately collapsed and fell and took a small portion of the ceiling with it. So the shock and slight worry on my face at that moment is 100% genuine.
It was.
I was not supposed to tear down the ceiling of someone's building. So
I kept it in.
Okay.
It's in there, yeah.
So yeah,
that was great. That was like
that scene. That was not acting. That was all genuine.
He's just like,
fuck.
Oh shit!
All I had to do was just stay in character.
Yep, that was that. I remember when I got that, I was like, oh, I'm definitely putting that in.
Well, that's good, because there was an earlier thing. It was one of the first things that we shot for the movie. And it was a location we did not use any footage from. But we're in these little patch of woods, and at one point I'm traipsing through, and I'm walking through a marshy area, walking on like frozen logs. And at one point I slip off, and I don't remember what exactly I said, but it was something to the effect of like, God damn you, Mike. Or like, I stayed in character amazingly. I don't know how, but that's what came out of my mouth. And then we carried on, and like, we had the scene, but then we didn't use anything from that location. Like, none of that ended up in the movie. I was so pissed about that, because I stayed in character, and I was so proud of myself, because I had to shoot another 2 hours with a completely wet boot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that happened a lot.
Yeah, when you film in snow.
Yeah, the nightmare of snow is I got very accustomed to shooting in the snow, because not only was it double fold where it was like it covers everything, so you can't tell that the grass was mowed. Mm-hmm. It's just snow. You can't tell where you are because it looks all the same, but also it acts as a natural light bounce too.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to do any lighting outside.
For the exterior shots, it was a cakewalk every time.
Yeah, so it was great for me, but it was miserable for you.
Yeah.
And everybody else that was acting. But, well, I mean, I was suffering too. I was out in the cold. It's not like I was driving around in my little golf cart that was all sealed in.
No, you were trudging with us with bags full of gear. So.
But I mean, technical wise, it was great. It was great filming in the snow because it was great for lighting and just set deck. The only thing that did become a problem after a while was when you would do multiple takes and walk through the snow, you leave footprints. So I had to CG out some of the footprints to make it.
Yeah, I remember a few times we tried to like change angles slightly each time. So my last footprints were over here, and then I'd walk here, and then here, and then here.
Yeah, sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't. There's like I'm not the best at doing CG. Like usually I farm that out if I absolutely have to, but we had literally no budget on this. It was coming straight out of my paycheck and holding down a full-time job, but then also doing that. Now I do this for a living, and I still have no money. But when I was filming,
but you at least have more time for it.
I definitely have more time for it. This is I think I've done eight films this year, plus like a bunch of small like gig related things, some small shoots and promotions and commercials and that kind of thing. But I have.
This is not an ad, but I will link to his YouTube channel and to whatever down there.
Yeah, come check us out. But this was this was the only project I was working on for a couple of years. I mean, we did some small stuff in between, but this was the main project. And once we got it done, I remember when we wrapped on it. And even I'll go pick her up and bring her back and forth and stuff. And our drive is usually our decompression.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember having that conversation with her. I was like, this is going to be really weird. We're not working on it anymore. It's done.
Yeah.
It's finished.
I remember when we met up and we did the, I'm forgetting how words work now, but our premiere. Because when we first launched the movie, it's on YouTube. I'll link that down there too. But we did a live stream of us with the movie, and we were like, just talking with fans and doing all that stuff the whole time as the movie's playing. And like, I don't know if it was fans. I think it was all just the cast and crew that showed up. But it was just so weird to be watching it and be like, this is the final edit. Like, I had seen you edit a million times. I had seen the movie in every stage of development. But watching that one, you're like, no, this is it. Like, this is the movie now. There's no more changes. We don't get to do anything else. Like, it's done.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was really weird to know, like, this is over. This is it. Like, we put this out there now. And now people, like the guy that reviewed us on IMDb, they just get to watch what we made. So, yeah, that was weird.
It was a very bittersweet feeling because you work on something for so long, it becomes part of, like, your routine.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're done with it, you're like, oh, well, shit, now what am I going to work on? And,
plus now, too, when I watch it, I see little scenes from, like, I wish we were still working on this because I want to do this better.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I hate how this came out. I know I could do better, or at least I hope I can.
Mm-hmm. I guess because, as like a bonus for whoever's our viewer, one person,
our one reviewer there,
our one viewer who will watch it. There was an entire completely different ending scene that was going to happen, and we had it written and we were looking forward to filming it, but we ran out of time and budget, and it was originally going to be you breaking into that hospital that was in the flashback scene and walking through the hallways, and there were going to be some of the zombified people still trapped in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So story-wise, the original thought for the zombies were that a majority of them just became very like zoned out zombies, just kind of living their last few hours of their life. Like if they were a nurse passing meds, they're still trying to do that 30, 40 years later.
They're just stuck in wherever they left off. Basically.
Exactly. And then there were another flavor of zombie that just went completely berserk and then also got telekinetic abilities along with that.
That was like my sister that we ran into.
Right. So she because she was so young, she kept a little bit more of her...
When we started shooting, she was young.
Yeah.
When we finished, she had aged 6 years.
Yeah.
And
I'm glad we finished that last scene with her when we did.
If we had to have gone another year, it wasn't going to work anymore.
Yeah, we did go back up for pickup shots. It was almost a year and a half, 2 years after we had shot the initial scene with her in it. She looked completely different. So, but yeah, that last scene was supposed to be you lurking through the halls of the hospital, encountering zombies that are just very benign and not paying attention to you, not really realizing what they're doing. And you were going to freak yourself out more than they were. Like, you were going to have to, like, tiptoe through them Silent Hill nurse style, like, trying to keep away from them as you're creeping through the hallways. And then you, like, because you're a complete klutz, walk into doors, slam stuff down, and you're like freaking yourself out. And then I had the one scene that I wanted to do was like you're just walking down the hallway and you just hear a squeak, squeak, squeak of like wheels, and then you see an old decrepit lady in a wheelchair just wheeling herself across the hallway, and she just kind of like stops and looks up at you, and you're just like Scooby-Doo the fuck out of there. And then that's when you would go into the scene where you run into the boiler room, get knocked out.
That was what ended up being the finale.
Yeah, that was supposed to be the lead up. Your sister was supposed to be thrown in there too. I don't remember exactly.
She was originally a bigger part of the movie.
Yeah, and we had to trim down different parts of that too because of her availability. Plus, we barely snuck in before puberty came knocking because she shot up like 8 inches and got she looks like a 30-year-old now. But yeah, she was very small for her age when we recruited her. And but she did a great job, and it was the idea was that she was young in universe when it happened, and she stuck at that age when she became a zombie, but she was also young enough to not completely lose everything mentally. So that's why she was creating like dolls and toys and stuff for herself, because she's trapped there. She's got nothing to do. And you end up walking through her weird spider web full of toys and stuff hanging from the ceiling, which was our art department. Eve and Kaylin came up with the idea of stringing them together through there. And ironically, we used that same location, that same building, from different angles. In different scenes,
we had so many scenes buildings. In that building.
Yeah, I think we ended up using that one building because you could film it from different angles and it would look different. We ended up using it for like 5 different locations.
Oh yeah.
Plus their backyard and all that stuff. But it was definitely an exercise in creativity, trying to get everything to fit, without having any costume person dedicated or props person.
Yeah.
It got to the point where we weren't sure where things were going to go in the movie, to the point where there were 2 props that we had to carry around. He had this orange bag, this orange duffel bag, and then you had a blue shoulder bag. And we didn't remember where it was going to go, or we weren't too sure because of the edit. We were editing it the whole time while we were filming it. We weren't sure if we were going to move this one scene before or after you found the bag. So we just shot the same scene with both props.
With both sets, yeah.
Yeah, that was actually Eve's idea, because we were like, that's not going to work out. Yeah. So yeah, you would go running through the woods with the orange bag, and then you would do until we got a good take of that, and then we would give you the blue bag, and then have you run through and do the same thing over again, because we didn't know where it was gonna fit, which was a good thing because.
It ended up working out in the end.
Yeah, when I got back to the editing room, I was just like, oh god, I'm so glad that we did that, because it would have been a nightmare. And I mean, I know that there are a lot of continuity things wrong with it, but I've
not as many. I will say I'm happy with how our movie came out. Like, there's a couple things minimal. I know because I was there. I was behind the scenes. I know like what props we lost or what stuff changed. I'm like, that's not perfect, but like, it wasn't bad. Like I watched a couple movies earlier on in this marathon where they just had, movies that had a bigger budget than ours and better effects and better everything, and like they had glaring continuity issues. Things like there was one, Toys of Terror, and I pointed it out in the review, where one of the items in the movie, it's a central focus of the movie. Like, it's a Toys to Life movie, and this specific toy is one of the evil toys that's coming alive. So, like, it's basically the villain of the movie. It's central to the plot, the story, everything. And there's a scene where the character sets it down, and then later picks it up and leaves the room with it, and then the camera cuts back to the people still in the room, and it's still there. And like, it's central in the scene. It's central to the story. Like, it's a major focus when you see him pick it up and set it down and leave with it and carry it. So like, just not knowing where it is in the scene at all times is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So like, when I watch our movie and I see, the tiny little minor errors that we had, I'm like, but these are inconsequential.
Right.
Like, these are nothing compared to the stuff that's happening in that movie. There's the famous one in Happy Gilmore where he shatters the window, and like, that's the whole point of the scene, is he shatters the window, and then the camera cuts back and the window's there again. Yep. And like, that's glaring and obvious. Nothing in ours was like, hey, this item or object is a central focus. Oh, and by the way, we screwed it up. Like, all of ours is like, some subtle prop in the background changed slightly, or like the gloves I was wearing in one scene aren't the same gloves I'm wearing in the next scene.
Yeah.
But like,
surprisingly,
I think
we were able to keep
pretty
it pretty minimal. Yeah, I was kind of proud of that. It wasn't a complete shit show by the time we got to the end. And
with how many times we rewrote things and moved scenes around, it's amazing it worked as well as it did.
Yeah, it was definitely a surprise at how well things went together. Like I had planned for that, but then also the fact that we were always hitting a moving target.
Mm-hmm.
We would have to rewrite scenes, and we weren't. I wouldn't say that we were rewriting it like constantly. It was like we would rewrite the scene, and then we would have to try and prep for it for like 2 months to get there. So it wasn't a huge surprise. We never really showed up on set and said we're going to do something completely different than what we told you yesterday. It was never like that because we weren't shooting that quickly and consistently.
It was mostly when we were in between winters. You would edit up everything you had, and then realize that I don't think this is quite right, or I think we're missing a scene here. And we'd get like a rewrite over the summer or whatever, and then when we got to another winter month, that's when we'd shoot again, and we'd reshoot bits that we had shot, or shoot something to change what we had shot.
Right.
But yeah, it wasn't like those movies you hear about where, day of filming, they're changing what you're going to film before you get on stage.
Right.
Like, yeah, it was never that crazy.
We never really gave ourselves a time limit on this.
No.
I gave myself artificial deadlines just to keep everything going.
And we missed most of them.
And missed all of them. But the funny thing was, once I got it done, it was completely done and edited and uploaded to YouTube like 2 months before premiere.
Mm-hmm.
So I gave myself that extra time in case I was like, at the last second, I was like, I changed my mind. I'm going to put something else in there. Like I gave myself at least like, a good solid 6 to 8 weeks before, if we were going to have to like scramble to do a pickup shot of something. But I'm a perfectionist, and it's hard to let something completely finish, like call it completed. But I did tell myself, I was like, it's not just about me anymore, because originally when I started this, it was going to be a short film, and I wanted it for my portfolio because I'd worked on so many different projects, doing cinematography and doing like other things like art department.
But you've never done a movie,
right? But I never really had access to the footage after I was done. I'm like, I shoot it and then I hand it off to the editor, and I don't see it for 8 years.
Yeah.
And it was frustrating because most of the time it was either I shot it and it was like an NDA thing, or I shot it and it was a project that died, so I never really had anything for my own portfolio. So originally when it started out, it was going to be for me to just show that I can film stuff. And then by the time it got done, I worked on a bunch of other stuff, and I was just like, I'm going to finish it for the people that were involved. That was what drove me ahead. I was like, I'm doing it for them now, not just for me. So after a while, I was like, I need to call it finished. I could tweak it and tweak it and tweak it forever. And add stuff to it.
And then we'd all be dead by the time you put it out.
Yep, exactly. But I finished it, and I got it out for the people that wanted to see it and the people that worked on it. And, I'm proud of everybody that worked on it, because we started with like 6 people and ended with like 40.
Yeah.
40 plus, which is insane because I never thought that would happen. That was another contributing factor to changing the script so often, because we'd get new people in new locations as we were working on stuff, and I'm like, oh, well, I can't pass that up.
Yeah, if you have a new toy to play with, you got to do it.
Exactly. It matured and progressed as it went along and became bigger than what it was, and I just squeaked it in as a feature, because technically over 45 minutes, I mean, it's kind of an unofficial rule, but 45 minutes and under is considered a short, 45 minutes and over is a feature. It's not like an hour and a half type feature.
No, we're like 50 minutes or something. Like,
we're
just
over
the line, but not.
Yeah, we're just under an hour. And I wanted to make it a feature, but I originally started out as a short film. So when I got everything edited, I was like, I'm not gonna put a time on this. I'm not gonna say that it's got to be an hour long. Because if I tried to edit it so it hit an hour, I think I'd be adding things in that just fluffed it up. I think I got enough of what needed to be there without being gratuitous with fancy shots and things that just weren't needed.
And that's the thing, like the reviewer said, there were some plot holes that could have been nice to fill in, or some things that would have been good to deep dive into more. And a lot of that we did. I know Tyler, or his character Mike, we basically used him as an exposition machine in a lot of stuff, and I know you ended up trimming or cutting some of that because it was too much. It killed the pacing. It really, everything dragged to a halt while he's basically just spewing a bunch of jargon. And after a while, you're just going, this doesn't fit the movie. We get that it explains a few things, but at the same time, it explains them at the cost of people caring about them.
Right.
You can only hear him explain it so much, and then you're like, I don't even care anymore. Just move on.
Right. Because we had to work with his schedule too, because we only had him for a few days.
At the time, he had a very just crazy job where he was going all over the place, and he would disappear for days or weeks at a time for his work. So we had to work around a crazy schedule with him.
Right. It was surprising that I was able to make you the main character when originally it was going to be him, because he's the one who got lost.
Yeah.
Originally, that's how it was written, but then we worked it into where it was more of a POV from you following after him, because you're a supportive friend, but you also don't believe half of the shit that comes out of his mouth. You figure that he's probably just fell down a well somewhere, and you're gonna go rescue him.
Story-wise, though, I think that made for the more interesting movie. I know you don't watch a lot of movies. Which
surprisingly, I've been working on it, because there's just a list of movies that I should watch, and when I tell people I haven't seen that movie, they're just like, really? You haven't seen that movie? And you make movies, but you haven't watched that movie?
Well, that's always the thing, is you haven't seen a lot, and I've seen just way too many horror movies. I do this every year, and so going into it, I had that mindset of all right, I don't want us to be overly tropey. I don't want us to do the things that every horror movie has done 1,000 times. I don't want to do something that's been done to death, which we ended up doing a zombie movie, so kind of missed the mark there. But I think it was definitely the better story decision to have someone basically trying to find this victim, not knowing what happened to him, rather than just showing the person running from zombies.
Right, I didn't want to do that.
I feel like this is a slightly better angle, and not just because I'm self-serving and I wanted to be a star in a movie, but I feel like that's the more interesting angle. And my character's trying to work off of the clues that Mike involuntarily left behind through just, his vlogs and the things that he was shooting while he was there. And I'm trying to piece together from his vlog or the voicemails he left me, oh shit, what happened to him? Where is he? Where did he go when he got here? How did this all play out? So I feel like that made for a more interesting watch, a more interesting movie than if we just said, oh hey, this guy who hunts supernatural stuff finds supernatural stuff. He knew he would. Every movie people have seen before.
Right.
It's Blair Witch, it's The Conjuring, it's a million movies. And this was a little different take. So I feel like that just made it more unique.
I wish I would have had a larger budget, bigger crew and stuff from the beginning, because the ironic thing is, with as simple of a storyline as it is, conspiracy theorist goes into the woods, gets himself in trouble, his inept friend goes to follow him, and then runs into zombies. As simple as that is, we came up with a ton of backstory.
And did use most of it.
Yeah, years of backstory for the mythology of this town and its history, and purposely made things happen the way they did. How I even, when I was editing, was keeping in mind where you would actually be in the fictional layout of the town. Even though we filmed this in completely different spots, I wanted to make sure that in my mind it would make sense that if you walked in this direction, you would walk back in this direction when you left, and be able to rehash that. So I made a fictitious map of where you were in the town during different scenes. Plus everything in-universe reasons why this place existed, how the zombies got created and everything. I really wish I could have expanded on that.
If we had the time and the resources and the actors and everything to, from the start, and we had a bigger budget, the first third of the movie, the first act could have just been basically that flashback, just building the town and showing how everything went down with my mother and the outbreak and all of that leading into it.
That was originally
And then the
planned.
second act could have actually been where we started the movie.
Yep.
And then it cuts to modern day me and Mike and him being the conspiracy theorist and me being just the cynical jerk that I am, because, I don't know, when you go from you're raised in foster care and this and that, and you're I don't care about anything, I don't believe in anything, life sucks, everyone sucks. And so Mike's on all his nonsense, and I'm just yeah, whatever, dude, I don't care. But like, yeah, if we would have had the time and the resources, all the backstory was there. Like, you could have made a full, 2.5 hour blockbuster length movie with everything we set up. It was just we didn't have those time and resources.
Yep.
We were just a bunch of guys in the woods working off of your wallet. So
right? Yeah, that was what it boiled down to. Was just like, what can I get rid of story wise to make something cohesive, but also just like progress it and not go bankrupt while doing it.
Yeah,
and it was tough. Sometimes you have to kill your babies. You're like the scene of you getting handed off by your mother. To this mysterious person that takes you to New York City, and that was actually a planned scene. Like I had pictured it like the flashback of like the car rolling up with the rain and everything like that, and then just a silhouette of a person.
Speaking of movie cliches that he's not aware of because he doesn't watch movies.
Yeah. It would have been cliche.
The Orphan in the Rain is pretty much every movie ever has done that.
I know. I do. I've seen enough of those, but I kind of like visually like it, and it's a flashback. It's not a main point, but it would have looked cool. I had like all of it planned out and storyboarded and stuff, but we never got to shoot it. Yeah. There were a lot of things that we had to get rid of, which I'm glad that the guy who wrote that review ended up filling out like a list of things that we should have checked off, but I already knew about. Yeah. Nothing was a surprise when I read that. I was like, he is 100% right. I can't disagree with anything that he said. And it's all stuff that I knew.
I'm not mad in the slightest.
Nope.
And those are all complaints that we had ahead of time. But I will, to bring it back to the reviewer, because we have to wrap this up at some point. I do like, he said, it feels like these guys could do something great in the future and blah, blah, blah. And like, that's one thing I want to stress is that like, we want to keep doing this. Like, you're a full-time filmmaker now. Well, you're a full-time videographer, cinematographer, whatever the hell you call yourself. And, like, I've worked on you with several other projects since, both in front and behind the camera. Like, this is definitely something we want to do more. So hopefully in upcoming years, we'll get to review another movie that we made. Or maybe someone else will review our movie or something. I don't know. But, yeah, this is definitely something we'll keep doing.
Yep.
And... obviously, we couldn't objectively talk about the movie, so that's why I wanted to get that review in there, and instead just give you guys a little bit of inside baseball as to how movies work, and specifically how our movie got made. So, I don't know if you have any other last-minute closing thoughts.
I guess if you haven't seen it, go watch it. Why wouldn't you if you're watching this? But although
and again,
I can't fault
description.
People. I can't fault people for watching BTS and like how things are made and not watch the movie. I've done that myself quite a bit. But go watch the movie, and then also we have quite a bit of like BTS and outtakes and funny stuff in there. And then I made like a dedication video to like the cast and the crew because they worked their asses off and like for $0. Yeah. And sometimes I didn't even have like lunch for everybody. It was bad. But they stuck through it for 6 years, waited for this thing to get done, and then when we finally released it, they were like, "Wow, it's actually done. We can share it with the family.
We can stop doing this now."
But if you are interested in making films and making movies yourself, it's like the way I got into it is I tried getting on sets, tried applying for stuff. I would like. Send my name to different places and it would never pan out, and I ended up just like being a glorified road cone or a PA on some of these like actual budget sets, big budget sets. And it was pretty miserable. So I'm like, after a while, I was just like, I'm just gonna go make my own stuff, and that's how I got started in it. But but now there is a bigger community of people making films on the regular. My advice would be check out some of the 48-hour film festivals that they do throughout the year. There's tons of them. There's like 60 or 80 cities that they do it in throughout the country. Find a local group near you, and then you kind of get thrown into the entire abridged process of making a film in 48 hours. You literally have to write it, shoot it, edit it, and deliver it in 48 hours.
Yeah.
So if you want to learn how to make a movie... That's like
that's the crash course.
That is the Cliff Notes abridged crash course version of making a movie. And a lot of those people are really good at what they do. They like make their team and they bring them back every year and stuff. So if you're new on a team, you're not going to be working alone. You're going to be working with other people, and that's a really good way to practice doing that kind of stuff. I still do those. I love doing those because I'm a fucking masochist. I've done 5 this year. One next week we're going to Chicago to see if we won any awards. They're going to do the premiere of it and everything, and it's honestly I think it's one of the best 48s that I've ever done. I shot that and helped edit, and that was fun. But 48-hour film projects are a really good way to get started if you don't want to pony up the budget yourself for making a film. But you might not get the position that you think you want, but you'll see everything that goes on, which is really a really good way to get started.
And I'll piggyback off of what you said a little bit there too. Is that like, because we're just giving filming advice now. If you're trying to get into it and it's not what you want, or like you're not finding the right positions or the right teams, like just go out and make what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Like, obviously, if you're following these videos and you're on my channel, I don't know why, because these are awful, but like, I watch indie horror movies all the time. I watch them not just in October, that's just when I film it, but all throughout the year. I love watching indie films, and like, there are people out there making terrible movies, but there are people making great movies, and more importantly, people are just making the movies they want to see. Like when I watched I Was a Teenage Were Skunk, the title makes it sound ridiculous, and it is ridiculous, but it's amazing. And it's just because these people wanted to pay homage to and also parody, the old 50s drive-in monster movies. And so that's what they did. Like, that's a movie that someone said, hey, this needs to be out there, and I'm going to be the one to make it. And so that's what you should do. If you have the idea for something that you want to see, or if you think that movies all follow the same tropes and you think they should go differently, then just go do it. Like, even if it's not the best, at least you'll learn how. And then if you try it again, it'll be better the second time. So,
yeah, the only way to get better is to keep doing it, because I look back at my first stuff and I'm just like, I thought I was amazing, and I was not. So your perspective will shift when you actually do hit a level to where you're able to reflect on it and go, wow, you can see a progression.
And that'll keep going. Like, in another 10 years, when we look back, we'll talk about how awful Willowvale was and how great the projects we did afterward were.
Yep.
So, like, it'll keep going. Just try it and just do it.
But always be proud of where you started, because you had to start somewhere, and everybody started somewhere.
Yeah.
Spielberg probably started doing home movies, and, I started with a VHS camcorder. My first film was a stop-motion clay dinosaur film when I was in 4th grade.
So there you go.
Yep. So, I mean, just do whatever you want to do. Make a movie for you, and then eventually you get paired up with the right people at the right time, and you'll be able to make things that speak to other people too.
Yeah.
But don't get hung up on it, because I mean, the one thing that can be super discouraging is that in the world that we live in now, people kind of live off of and feed off of that constant feedback from people. Like, you post a picture on Instagram, and if you don't get 100 likes, you're like, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
Willowvale hasn't even gotten 1,000 views yet, and we worked on that for 6 years.
We've gotten one review. It's been
one review.
We spent 6 years on it. It's been out for a year. Mm-hmm. One review.
I could have used that as a way to be like, see, everything that I'm doing is not worth it. Nobody's seeing this movie. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, and on the flip side of that is I'm proud of the 400 plus views that we did get.
Yeah.
And the fact that somebody literally took the time to write a detailed review and liked it enough to give us actual feedback.
Yeah.
Not knowing that we would ever see it or care.
No.
But we saw it, and we know that this is how we can improve in the future, and it's all things that we can build towards. And just take the victories that you get and let that push you forward. Don't get bogged down with the fact that you're not getting 1.5 million views and 100,000 likes in your first week of posting it. Because I've worked on other stuff that's got hundreds of thousands of views and millions of views and likes and stuff, and I'm not as proud of that as I am the movie that I spent 6 years on, because it wasn't just me. It was a collaborative effort, and everybody can be proud of it. They stuck through it and finished it. We actually made a movie, which is not something that everybody can say. So if that's what you want to do, you don't need to ask permission to make a movie. Just make it. And it can be as simple as you setting up a tripod and filming yourself with a good script and a storyline, or your friends and family, and if you got lots of money to throw at the wall, just hire your crew and sit back and be like, okay, I want to make a movie, and just direct it. But you can be a filmmaker regardless of what your role is. Whether you're the boom operator, making the props, writing the story, doing the hair and makeup, you can be a filmmaker wherever you fit in, because I never thought I would be doing props and stuff, but that's something that I really like to do. So I do that on other people's film sets. It's not my film. I'm not directing it and filming it, but I'm making the props, and I'm making the signs and stuff that are in the background that everybody gets to see, or like the cans that people are holding, like all of those little things that kind of lend to making it more realistic. And I have fun with that, because then I get to hide Easter eggs in there. One of the short films that we did a 1980s hacker short, and it was it came out of a simple conversation that Eve and I had, because you actually gave me an old Apple II that was like busted, and I fixed it. And when I fixed it, I was like, this would be a cool prop for a movie. And then we're like, okay. So we wrote that, shot it in a weekend, and one of the Easter eggs I hid in there was that one of the characters was wearing a Willowvale Harbor shirt.
Yep.
It was Willowvale class of 1984, shirt, and it just, so does it make it so it's a cinematic universe now? Like Stephen
Absolutely,
King?
yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, every film that I make from now on will be in the Willowvale universe in some way.
Right, well, he's going off Kevin Smithing it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all we have to say. That was the movie. Hopefully you got something out of this, because we rambled long enough that there should be something in there. And yeah, stay tuned. I'm going to do more game reviews, and I'll do more of this horror movie stuff next year, and maybe rope you along again.
Yeah.
So yeah, happy Halloween, and I'll see you later.
And if you stuck around to the end, email us. Like, send us a message. Let us know what you thought of the film. Like, we would.
Or because this is YouTube and he doesn't know how that works, there's a comment section down there. So just do that thing.
I kind of ignore the comment section. It becomes a shit show after a while.
I don't have enough fans for that to be an issue.
Put it in the comment section. We'd like to hear from you.
All right. See ya.